I'm a sailor, marching on a wave. Oh, I'm a failure, trying to find his way. And all my best friends, they're gonna have to find me. 'Cause on my deathbed, I'll be lost at sea, happy as can be. Happy as can be. I guess I gotta go back home. I guess I gotta make my own. A house made of sticks and stones. The roof fell down and it broke my bones. Now I'm at a loss for words unless they're all absurd. Take all the sheep who heard when the wind picks up and fly. My senorita's at home. Yeah, she's waiting. Hello, welcome to Stories of Impact Workshop. My name is Robert Green. I am from San Leandro, California. I'm a rising sophomore at McAllister College, double majoring in women's studies in Robert. And I'm gonna pass it off to Ale.
Hi, so I'm Bonilla. I'm from Norwalk, Connecticut. I'm a rising junior at the University of Lynchburg, and I'm majoring in English with a minor in secondary ed, and I use she, her pronouns.
Perfect. So we're gonna transition to an icebreaker. My favorite game, Kahoot. So I'm gonna share my screen to everyone, and you're gonna type into Google, or some people have the app. People are advanced out here. And you're gonna search Google Kahoot, period it. Then once everyone logs on and type in the number, let me just share my screen. That probably would be helpful. Then you will see it. Then, sorry, that is not important to you guys. Ooh, perfect. Play, teach. Oh, it says only the 50 players. Okay, there you go. So you would write this code in and follow the instructions at the top.
Perfect. What's going on? Hurry up. Go.
I'm gonna go ahead and agree with Carleni in the chat. 169 people. Like, I've never seen a Kahoot that big. So like,
Oh, it's starting to deny people? Mm.
oh no, 169 people. Like, I've just never seen a Kahoot that. So
I know.
I'm excited. This is gonna be competitive.
So I'm gonna wait a few more seconds and get people signed in.
Where do you type it?
So after you search in this link, it's gonna be an icon that says enter game pin. Then you're gonna enter it into the middle of the screen.
So the number for people that are dialing in is 755-678. 755-678.
So wait a few more seconds. So I think I'm gonna start. If anyone has any objections. Oh, people are still coming in. $123 people. Anyone else? Okay, we're gonna get started.
Okay, so which one is not a Bonner commitment? Diversity, spiritual exploration, expertise, or community building?
Okay. Steven, there you go.
What university allows every Bonner leader to acquire a distinction in leadership studies program certification? Capital, Birmingham Southern, Edgewood, or Christopher Newport?
They made some tough questions, y'all. Get ready.
Jessica M.
Mr. Bertram Bonner founded the Bonner Foundation in 1980, 1992, 1997, or 1990?
$19.90. Jessica M, you're killing it.
Whose Bonner Program College's mascot is this? Carson Newman, Kentucky Wesleyan, Washington and Lee, or Tusculum? The first president of the Bonner Foundation was Bertram Bonner, Bobby Hackett, Corella Bonner, or Wayne Measel.
Ryan I coming in to win at the last minute.
How many schools are in the Bonner network? 68, 63, 65, or 71? Robert did not go easy on these questions at all.
To be fair, this one fluctuates a little bit.
65. Art? Okay.
Okay, what college had the first Bonner program? College of Charleston, Berea, Emory and Henry, or Berea again?
It's very nice. Sorry, that was a mistake. You're both one. You're both one. Perfect.
Art. Which of these schools does not have a Bonner program? Carthage, DePauw, Concord, or Morehouse? Approximately how many Bonner alumni are there? 13,000, 18,000, 15,000, or 20,000? Where is the 2020 Summer Leadership Institute not taking place? Zoom, Google Hangout, Bonner Learning Community, or Bonner Connect?
Wow, you came for all the platforms.
To those 7 people, you are on Zoom right now, just to let you know. Then perfect. Then Art won. Let me stop sharing my screen.
Awesome.
Who's Art? Can we know who Art is? Will you identify yourself?
Art. It's Arthur.
It was an inside job.
Oh my gosh.
That's cheating. We'll take the second place.
Wow.
Perfect. So I hope that you guys had a little fun. I'm gonna pass it off to Ale to reflect the year at a glance.
And for that, I'm gonna pass it off to Ari.
All right, thank you. Give it up for a great Kahoot game. That was awesome. So the 2020 Bonner SLI planning team was invested in an all-group session that not only reflected on and punctuated the beginning of the 30th year of the Bonner program and considered the impact of Bonner, but also invited us to look at the changes that are affecting us. This session and the one that follows it invites the sharing of stories. They also invite us to think about ourselves, how we individually and personally must change, who we want to be in the world, and what kinds of changes we want to make in the world. We have a video to share with you. We are grateful to the direction and help from a Bonner alum, from Berry College, and from the Bonner Foundation team, Jasmine Rangel. Back to you, Allie.
In 1990, the first Bonner program began at Berea College in Kentucky. Today in 2020, more than 65 colleges and universities have a Bonner program that involves students' developmental journey over 4 years in college that often become a lifetime of commitment.
We mark the beginning of the 30th anniversary of the Bonner Network and 3 decades of accomplishments. The Bonner program has brought so many dreams, hopes, and impacts for many of us, our families, and our communities.
This year, we know we will continue making a community impact and educating our peers on important social issues and developing important relationships. Like everyone around the globe, we have had to adapt, change, and reimagine our work, our lives, and our dreams.
The brutal killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and countless others are horrid, unjustified, and very clearly depict the centuries of oppression. These incidents fuel pain and fear in our communities, which Bonners courageously work to overcome and defeat every day. For days now, we have seen what centuries of mounting pain and injustice have boiled out to. We are also seeing communities come together to seek change that has been neglected for far too long. Bonner love is inspired by the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. These words represent the hopes and ideals of countless and diverse organizers, activists, and change makers who have inspired our movement. The heroes we celebrate have been shaped and supported by countless people whose names have been forgotten. As we go into a tumultuous public environment, take a moment for yourself and for those around you. Self-care in a time of oppression and injustice is a form of resilience, and Bonners are among the most resilient in this nation. Reflect on the people who have touched and have impacted you and your life, and whom you have impacted and touched. Remember, we are the beloved community.
This spring, also we lost final goodbye hugs with our Bonner families, the children we mentor, the organizers who invested in us, professors who educated us. We lost the opportunity to honor our community partnerships for their dedication and hard work. We lost the moments to celebrate the achievement of a college degree with our loved ones. And most importantly, some of us may have even lost loved ones. But we also found strength, courage, and hope in each other.
In the past few months, our hopes for a better tomorrow were challenged as the needs of communities have been exacerbated. Now, more than ever, the world needs the leadership, the empathy, and the drive of the Bonner community. Even though many of us could not help our communities without compromising their health, we could not ignore the call to continue serving, learning, and changing the world.
Dr. Elvis Francois, Oberlin Bonner alumni and surgeon at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, gave hope to frontline healthcare community workers by singing uplifting songs. At the University of Tampa, senior Bonner and dance major Janelle Worley created online dance classes for children with special needs. At Center College, 10 students, including sophomore Bonner Hannah, prepared 76 mask sets in conjunction with a larger community effort that has collectively provided over 4,100 masks for healthcare workers. Bonners from the College of New Jersey helped a longtime community partner swiftly switch to an online tutoring program to help at-risk Trenton teens. A Christopher Newport University sophomore Bonner, Sydney King, started a #WalkWithMe challenge to her family and friends to stay active and connected, which resulted in 2,392,331 steps submitted from over 23 states and 16 countries.
Our Bonner staff has even went the extra mile to celebrate us during our would-be graduations. They have also FaceTimed us when we were presented with incredible awards. They have even continued developing our education and training via online workshops.
This year, 567 Bonner students became alumni. Historically, 95% of these graduates have learned how to mobilize people for a cause or issue. And 85% of students have planned to use their knowledge and skills to solve community problems after they graduate. More importantly, Bonner students, graduates, and alumni know how interconnected and complex the problem facing our communities are, and have never been more prepared to be change agents.
For 30 years, our Bonner community has been resilient, and our heart for serving others has only become stronger. To truly embody this resilience, for the first time ever, the Bonner Foundation proudly hosts a virtual online Summer Leadership Institute that will reach the homes of many who may not have been able to join us before. We hope that you take many lessons from this opportunity, bring others along, and feel the true strength of Bonner love.
In this session and throughout this time, we invite you to think about the impact you have had on your service and engagement, and the impact your service and engagement has had on you. Bonner has changed our education, our learning, our community, our friendships, our families, our values.
We hope you find a message of hope in this network and in these next 2 days. Bonner has been providing students who are predominantly low income, first generation, and students of color the ability to succeed and exude excellence in their communities, despite contrasting narratives for the past 30 years.
30 years of access to education has only been amplified by the opportunity for students to serve. Bonner has been empowering leaders that the world needs for 30 years. Bonners have taken their transformative experience and used it to make intentional, groundbreaking changes throughout their communities, their campuses, their lives, and the world, and they will continue to do so.
What story of impact will you share today, tomorrow, and in the decades ahead?
Awesome. So I will now pass it on to Liz.
Thank you, Allie. And thank you to Jasmine for that fantastic video. We really appreciate her putting that together for us. So at this point, this session is titled Stories of Impact and Change. At this point in the session, originally Holly Couch, a 2020 Center College senior graduate, was going to speak about her own, sorry, I was making sure I wasn't on mute, speak about her own story as a low-income and first-generation college student and the impact that the Bonner program has had on her life. However, in light of national attention on systemic racism, police violence, and the Black Lives Matter movement, she didn't feel it was appropriate to be speaking about herself as a white woman in this moment. Holly was actually a former student of mine when I was the Bonner coordinator at Center. She is a thoughtful and compassionate young leader, and I'm proud that she has reflected on her identity and privilege and made the difficult decision to step down from this role. I obviously recognize that I too am a white woman and have a certain place in these conversations about racial justice and equity, and that I too have very few words of comfort to give at this moment. No amount of words I can give right now will make circumstances better. Overall, silence is not an option. So instead, we'd like to take this time to speak out and share some of the stories of some Black brothers and sisters who have been on the receiving end of murder, marginalization, and repression because of their skin color. The story of Breonna Taylor, the 26-year-old Black woman and native of Kentucky, my home state, who was gunned down by police in her own home. The story of George Floyd, the Black man in Minneapolis who died after the police kept their knee on the side of his neck for almost 9 minutes while he was handcuffed and lying face down. The story of Ahmaud Arbery, the 25-year-old Black man who was fatally shot and murdered in Georgia by white civilians while jogging near his home. It is also important that we not only share stories of oppression and violence against the Black community, but also share stories of beauty, power, and resilience. The story of Angela Davis, the American political activist, philosopher, academic, and author who has spent most of her life challenging white supremacy and fighting for prison abolition. The story of Andrea Abrams, a professor of anthropology at my alma mater, Centre College. She was named Associate Vice President for Diversity Affairs and Special Assistant to the President in 2018, and uses her voice, often as one of the only Black voices in certain spaces, to relentlessly call attention to injustice. And the story of Charles Booker, a young progressive Black man who is running an exciting campaign for Senate in Kentucky to push the state's government towards a more just and equitable community. These are only a few of the stories that we uplift today, but there are countless more. We encourage you to stay vigilant in your learning, in your listening, and in your actions. So thank you for your attention, and as always, Bonner love.
Thank you so much for that reflection. So we're gonna move on to our guest speakers. So let me introduce the guest speakers, and each guest speaker, can you wave or say hello? Unmute your mic and say hello. So I would like to now introduce our other guests, Tony Richardson, John Roush, and Shilretha Dixon. You can wave or say hello. Then as we go through the presentation and the speeches, please show appreciation in the group chat. Shilretha Dixon, she's the director of the City of DeLand Spring Hill Resource Center in Florida. Her center provides a convenient location where members of the Spring Hill community in DeLand broader city can obtain assistance on job searches, resumes, creation, unemployment, compensation, and notary services, Social Security, underinsured healthcare coverage, volunteer hours, and other income-based assistance programs.
John Roush, or as the students call him, P. Roush, began his career in higher education at Miami University as an assistant football coach and transitioned to the administration as executive assistant to the president of the University of Richmond. On July 1st, 1998, John became the 20th president of Centre College and will retire from that position on June 30th, 2020. Surrounded by an outstanding group of colleagues, the college has, during his tenure, grown by 40%, added 60 new faculty positions, increased its diversity in all ways one might measure, and tripled its endowment. An Ohio native, Roush holds a bachelor's degree in English from Ohio University and a master's and PhD from Miami University.
Tony Richardson is a newly appointed Bonner Foundation Board of Trustees and is the executive director of the Nord Family Foundation in Ohio. Executive Director Richardson served throughout Lorraine County, Ohio as a student. He holds a bachelor's degree in politics and African American studies from Oberlin College and a JD from the Ohio State University College of Law. Tony has professional experience in law, government, and education, including as a councilman at large in the city of Lorraine, becoming the youngest person of color elected to an at-large seat.
So now that we've heard a bit about everyone's background, I'm sure I speak for everyone in saying that we'd love to get to know our speakers a bit more. So for starters, we'd like to ask our speakers if they could spend a few minutes and tell their story and how the Bonner program has impacted their life and work. So we can start with Shilretha.
Hello there. I bring you greetings from the sunny DeLand, Florida, and Central Florida area. So Stetson has given me strong support by getting me involved in other programs, and they've been very instrumental in connecting me with other community partners that I may not have been aware of to enable my organization to expand our services and for me to meet the needs of the community. One of my jobs that I pride myself on is I am consistently assessing the community to find out what the needs are. And Stetson has played a huge role in that, specifically the Bonner program. So out of the Bonner program, I have a staff actually of 2 that helps me maintain this resource center. And the Bonner program afforded me the opportunity of having Stetson students here who could engage in the same activity that we do, to give them the hands-on approach so that they get the book knowledge from Stetson and they come here for life lessons. And I call it the hand-on approach. So most importantly, as I said before, they've introduced me to my Bonner students through summer studies and school year service. Some of the programs included, but not limited to, planning of the mayor's backpack giveaway event. We host a yearly Spring Hill Turn Festival, as well as a Thanksgiving dinner. And let me go back just a little. With the mayor's backpack event, we plan for literally 1,000 backpacks that we give away to school-age kids. Our Spring Hill Turn Festival, it turns out we may have anywhere from 600 to 750 attendees. It is a small community-based turn festival, and we invite partners under our partner tent, and they come and bring very information on how to access certain services that are needed in the community. We have a Christmas sponsorship and toy giveaway, which I just love. I love Christmas. I love giving. I am a person who gives, so I just love giving. And so just recently, I've had one Bonner student here, and she came up with Women Empower Women. And I love it, because today, for a woman to be out there and without being empowered is a recipe for disaster. So it included a mile-long walk with 4 weekly theme events. We concentrated on women's health. Sometimes as women, we have children, we have husbands, we're married, and we tend to put everything else ahead of ourselves and somewhat neglect ourselves. So we concentrated on women's health, employment, empowerment, rights and development, politics, and unfortunately, this program was impacted by the pandemic, so we didn't give it its full course. So we also did a sickle cell awareness event, realizing that that was one of the illnesses that is rarely talked about, but we realized that there are a lot of community residents who actually was dealing with sickle cell anemia. So we addressed that, and with that came a butterfly release, and it was beautiful. I wish I had pictures to share with you guys, because the butterflies were so beautiful when we released them. They were like docile, you know. I was afraid they were like little pets lighting on our hands and just everywhere. So it was a beautiful event. So it was a moment where we could educate the community and let others, as we're doing here, tell the story. So Bonners, I sort of get, and I don't want to get too far into it, because when I talk about Bonners and the Bonners that I've been fortunate to have here at the Resource Center, I love my Bonner students. And they have given so much to the community. And it's a wonderful thing when you come in and where you serve. And that if they don't see you, when residents come in, if they don't see these students, they start asking questions. Where is this person? Where is that person? Because they are truly a part of our community. And so I'll end it there for now, but I'll share other stories later.
Amazing. John Rapsh.
I'm not sure if he's on the call right now, so maybe we can go to Tony next.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll jump in. My name is Tony Richardson, as introduced by Robert, Executive Director of a National Family Foundation located in Ohio. We do grant making in Denver, Boston, Columbia, South Carolina, upstate New York, and Northeast Ohio. And the foundation focuses in 5 areas, or four or five areas of grant making. So human and social services, or health and social services, education, arts and culture, as well as civic affairs. Since joining the foundation, I've really was interested in ways that we can be more community-centered, thinking about ways of leveraging community activists and people with lived experience expertise. So instead of us working directly with our nonprofit partners, we wanted to expand that relationship to include the people they seek to serve, right? I always say, you know, who better to offer solutions to their problems than the people who are facing those problems. And while I have a law degree, people who are on the front lines have a PhD in their lived experience, right? And so we really wanted to open it up and be more connected and authentic about partnership and relationships. And during my time in college at Oberlin, as a Bonner Scholar, I really focused on community building, youth services, and actually launched 2 Boys and Girls Clubs in my hometown. At the time, there was a lot of unrest around sort of youth shootings. And I knew that unless we sort of took programming to communities, there were going to be issues that persist. And so what we did is we partnered with our housing authority back in 2002, 2003. And we decided to open up Boys and Girls Clubs in the housing authority, right? So again, I never sort of approached work and looked at sort of existing structures and institutions. It's always been, you know, how do we turn it upside down and really think about ways to go to people and deliver a service that they need, allow them to be a part of the creation and co-creating that, and then letting them run it, right? So those organizations in both locations are still running to this day. And a little bit about my personal experience and why I've really been sort of committed to community building, community activism, and then also, you know, launching into my career, or past career as an elected official. So I was born in Lorain County, Lorain City. It's about 25 minutes outside of Cleveland, west of Cleveland. Post-industrial Rust Belt, steel mills, car manufacturing town, a melting pot, right? Because during the 60s and 50s, a lot of families from across the country moved up north during the sort of Great Migration for jobs and work. And so I'm a byproduct of that sort of movement toward jobs for my particular family. When I was about 3 months, my mom was about 3 months pregnant, my father left her. My mom decided to move forward with her pregnancy, gave birth, and I never met my father to this day. But I did have a stepfather who was murdered when I was 10 years old. I still remember the headline in a local newspaper, "Drug Deal Goes Sour." He was murdered on July 9th of '93. And during that time, my mom disappeared. So they thought maybe that she was also kidnapped or she was murdered. And so no one knew where she was. And I actually stayed in our apartment where it was managed by a slumlord who never came to collect rents. I mean, I just sort of squatted at this apartment as a 9, 10-year-old throughout that summer, going into the spring, or going into the fall, right? So I'm going into 5th grade, school is starting, I'm homeless, haven't seen my mom. And one of my friend's moms allowed me to move in with them, right? And so I'm still living in the same neighborhood. This is the height of the crack cocaine epidemic. So think about what's happening around opioids. This was happening in the 90s, but it was with crack cocaine. So you saw a lot of, people going to jail, families being destroyed, kids being sort of orphaned off or sort of become wards of the state because their families couldn't take care of them. And these are Black and brown communities, right, that I'm really talking about. And so during this time, I'm just no guidance. I'm mad at the world, right? I'm young, I'm Black, I'm angry. I don't know who my mom is, my dad was murdered. I don't know my biological father, and I was running with the wrong people. And I'll be honest, there was a time where there was a sweep in our neighborhood around drugs, and a police officer pointed a double-barrel shotgun at me and told me to freeze because I looked like a suspect that was in the area. So from there, I was apprehended. I was 11 years old. I was put in jail. And obviously, I didn't have anyone to come get me. I didn't know where my mom was. And unless you had someone that can authorize your release, a parent or guardian, you had to sit. So I sat there and eventually sort of got out, right? Decided to go to school. And I always tell the story that when I went back to school, I knew very early on that I needed to be sort of in the honors program. It was not lost on me that when we came to school, certain kids went to the honors track where they had sort of all these resources and sort of stronger curriculum, field trips, and then there were students who didn't. So I ended up going and getting into that track. I convinced some of my educators to let me do so, and that sort of catapulted me, right? And so I made the honor roll grade in every grading period through K-12, through college, through law school. So I share that to set the context for what I'll discuss later, but I think it's always important to share your personal perspective because I think that shapes our worldview. So with that, we'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Thank you so much for sharing that and being vulnerable. So we're going to start and transition into asking our speakers questions. So we're going to start off with Shilretha Dixon. I'm just going to give just extra knowledge about her work and what her team has been being able to achieve while under her leadership. So the Resource Center stands now as the nucleus of information in the city, a key to understanding the world of public services. The Resource Center provided more than 800 people with some of 2,000 services in 1 week. It serves more than 200 residents of the DeLand and cities nearby. The Resident Center plans different events, such as the mayor's backpack giveaway that she mentioned, the Turn Festival in September, which unites two neighborhood and nonprofit organizations for a day of celebration, and the Christmas Toy Drive, spearheaded by Shilretha Dixon. The Resource Center oversees a network of volunteers and cares for people's most sensitive information. Every day, the Resource Center makes a positive difference in clients' lives. With the utmost respect, clap for the social justice warrior of the decade. We're impressed with your commitment to garnering cultural survival from marginalized communities by meeting their basic needs and providing a safe space. Then my two questions, I start with the first one. Is two of the Bonner Foundation's common commitments are community building and civic engagement. What were some hard decisions the organization had to make recently that might conflict with these core values? What have you done to remedy these issues? And just to make sure, when I say hard decisions in the current time, talking about COVID-19, layoffs, and different things similar to that.
Okay, so closing the center, I believe, was during the transition, COVID-19 transition, limiting services during the pandemic. Let me go back a little, because one thing I failed to do when I introduced myself was to tell you a little about what the Spring Hill. I represent a CRA, which is a community redevelopment agency. It's a public entity created by a city or a county to implement community redevelopment activities. Okay, so here our board consists of 3 members of the DeLand City Commission, 2 members, which are Volusia County Council, and 2 citizens appointments, one from the unincorporated limits and one from the incorporated limits, but both must be residents of the Spring Hill area. So that's what governs our CRA. The purpose of the CRA is to work jointly with the county council and the city in the completion of a redevelopment plan. That's been a huge problem here for the Spring Hill area in an effort to eliminate the blight area in this community. So our community was deemed a blighted community. Back in, I believe it was 2006 when Jeb Bush was governor here, he deemed that the Spring Hill area was one of the poorest communities in the state of Florida. And so he gave money because many of the residents here, if you would think about it, we don't have sewer lines in some of the communities here. So it's almost like parts of a undeveloped country. The things that we don't think about that happens here in the United States of America, you know, where, you know, everything is flowing and lots of money. But we still have communities who are dealing with unsanitary means because of lack of services that you would think every American should have. So, the Spring Hill Community Resource Center evolved as a service to address those needs. And in that, over the years, we have evolved. And in that, we created a Spring Hill Neighborhood Association, which is a 501c3, in which we can solicit for donations. Now, one of the things that I experienced that really was interesting is that we had to close the center pretty much and do business by phone or at the door. But when you get a community of people who are not computer savvy, that they have a, and one of the things, let me go back and say this also, that in this community is built off trust. So you have to have the trust of the community. And so having gained the trust of this community, residents come for literally, there are over 200 services that we provide. We are a mini link for the Department of Children and Families, as well as Employ Florida. And all of the services that they provide, we provide here, and upload documentation. We have first-time home buyers, where we actually, for someone who can qualify for down payment assistance, we run that program. So when we closed the center and had to shut off the computer lab, it limited the community with some of the basic services that they actually needed to survive. They needed to update DCF applications so that they can continue their SNAP benefits. They needed to apply for Medicaid so that they don't lose their medical health insurance. And the social distancing. Many of the people, when you look at, let's say minorities, many of them don't really understand what it means to social distance. So having to come to the door and you're wearing a mask as employees because we have to keep the public safe and our employees, our staff safe. So when you wear a mask, you know, it's working through that difficulty so that they don't feel offended. So those are just small elements that probably we don't think about, but can be very huge in a community, in a blighted community that's been underserved and impoverished. And the other element to that, one of the remedies that we did is we actually had a downtown business establishment restaurant that came in and actually started supplying us with COVID lunches and dinners. And so just last month, in the month of May, during this COVID process of, you know, having pretty much been shut down except for servicing by phone and servicing at the door, we saw over 2,000 residents, and those are daily unduplicated numbers. And most of it was due to the COVID meals. So that was one of the remedies that we did. So this restaurant donate meals Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday lunches, Friday dinner. And I mean, it's wonderful, to the unity that has come out of that. And so that's one of the programs that we offer to sort of bridge that gap and keep the community afloat during this pandemic. When you think about that, the computers are an integral service. So when we closed the computer station to stop the spread of COVID, it really did have a huge impact on the community. But I think we sort of redeemed ourselves, for lack of a better word, by serving those dinners, because it's made a huge difference with our kids who are home now and they need lunches and dinners. So it's made a huge difference.
Definitely, thank you. And I'm gonna lead into the other question. So what are the challenges and successes with partnering with different organizations and foundations to provide quality services to your constituents?
Delegation and conflicting ideas. Everyone has an idea. So compromise is a key element and a common mission in order to help us to succeed. So one of my main mottos is and I say this, and when I do, I'm passionate about what I do. One of the elements that I bring to the table is if we don't care who gets the credit, we can get the job done. So I always, that's my motto. Let's just get the job done. If you need to feel like you're in control, go ahead. I don't care. Let's just get this to moving. So we're here to provide a need. I serve with the belief and the commitment of just getting the job done. So I think that would be the only conflict. Other than that, it's a wonderful thing. We have partners here because of maybe some of the blightedness in the community. We have wonderful partners here that they're just on board for doing whatever. It's like a special love that goes out to this community. So we have the Florida Department of Health that partners with us. I mean, they come into our community with immunizations, hepatitis immunizations for the kids, school, offering STD checks, HIV testing, and even our county. Our county comes in, and where you usually have to go to their office to maybe apply for community assistance, let's say with rent or utilities, because of what our community, what our resident here, because of its underserved community, they actually will come here because we see so many people here. And many of the neighboring communities, they don't have access. So we have people as far as Astor and let's say Lake County, Eustis, and they come here. They travel 40 plus miles to come here to the resource center. So we don't have too many conflicts. I believe we're at a place where everyone knows that we need help. It's kind of like the George thing with the, I can't breathe. And so you say it long enough and hard enough, sooner or later, someone's going to believe it and people will step up. And so I believe we've been in this fight long enough that we have enough people on board who truly care and truly love helping. And so we just came together to create that type of atmosphere.
Thank you for answering my questions. I'm gonna pass it off to Ale.
Okay, so we're super excited that John Rash has now joined us. John Rash is president of Center College and has been described as a force of energy, imagination, integrity, and quality at the highest level, as well as a transformative and inspirational leader. It is clear that he lives up to his title of being an intellectual architect. John has been involved in the Bonner Network since 1990 at 2 institutions, the University of Richmond and Center. Since 1998, under his leadership, the college has added 14 new endowed professorships, instituted a Center Scholars Program to honor outstanding work, successfully revised its curriculum, finished work on the College Center, renovated the college's primary academic space and library, renovated the fitness and recreation facility at Center, and welcomed the Campus Center, Pearl Hall, and the AU Gene Brockman Common to campus. No introduction would even scratch the surface of all he's managed to do in his career. Today, he is here to share the work he does and his experiences in contributing to the lives of those around him. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. John Roush. So,
thank you, Allie.
Of course. So to start, we're just going to go back, and could you spend a few minutes and tell us about how the Bonner program has impacted your life or work?
Well, it would be not an overstatement for me to say that the Bonner Foundation and some of the people associated with the Bonner program have had a profound impact in my life. I'm getting ready to retire on the 30th of June. On my first day of retirement, July 1st, in my 70th birthday. And so I'm long in the tooth when it comes to the Bonner program. I mean, I knew Bobby Hackett when he was a mere boy. And I had the real privilege to meet Mr. and Mrs. Bonner. And I think, Bobby, if you nod your head in agreement, Mr. Bonner was a real character. He was a gentleman of the first order, and he loved people, and he loved young people. But she was the real force, I believe, in that couple for coming up with the ideas that now have resulted in this remarkable opportunity that you young people have to be out and of service to your community and to the greater good. So I had the occasion to spend some considerable time with Mr. and Mrs. Bonner when we were working on the Bonner program at the University of Richmond. And at the time that I had arrived there, there was actually a vacancy in student life, and so I was the acting vice president for student affairs for a time. So I'm about finished. And so I got to say, I had a chance to sit in their presence and learn a little bit about this. And the University of Richmond, which is an outstanding place, and I'm proud to have spent 17 years there of my life and raised our two boys there with Susie. And so we have great fondness for the University of Richmond. I'm getting ready to go back on their board of trustees here in about another 20 or 30 days. And you know, I was captured by the idea of having a program like the one you're a part of on our campus in a live and vibrant way and deepening the experience of the students in the life of their community. So I was all in and had to go through some movement to get it in place. But once you met, particularly Mrs. Bonner, the conversation was over. It was going to happen. And she would be so very proud of you people and Shilretha and all the rest who are out doing God's work, doing people's work each and every day, as I am. Hey, Liz, you're right next to me there. And so the second thing I would say is that having had them, we brought them the Bonner program, University of Richmond in 1992. And that was a proud day for lots of people, and it is for me. And then I came to University of Richmond on the 1st of July in 1998, which was my 48th birthday. And I knew when I arrived that we needed to have a Bonner program. And so I, at that point, got a hold of Mrs. Bonner, and I can't remember who escorted her out here. It may have been you, Bobby. I don't know whether it was you or Wayne, but somebody came with her, and it was for the purpose of coming out because she was a Kentucky resident. She had been born in Kentucky, had a real soft spot for her Kentucky home. And so the chance to have another institution alongside Berea be a part of the Bonner family was very, very important to her. It was not a hard sell. And we became a Bonner institution, I think, in 2002 here at Center College. And I must tell you, the profound impact it's had here in the life of our community, the students who are part of it, the Danville, Boyle County community, it's just remarkable. There's no other word. And I'm proud to have been a part of the Bonner program, 2 different places, and I'm in awe of what you young people do to contribute to the common good, to make this, your community and this world a better place. And that's what I tell people all the time about my association with the Bonner Foundation, with the Bonner Scholars. That's been my experience here with our students. These young people show up ready to do something that counts, and then later on we look back and admire their accomplishments. That's enough.
Awesome. So you touched on it before, but if you could tell us a bit more about the early years of Bonner, when you met Mr. and Mrs. Bonner, and why they chose the University of Richmond, and the role specifically that you played in the process of bringing the program there.
Well, I sort of became their ambassador because, you know, I was all in. Both Susie and I got a long history for trying to be involved in things that matter for good. And this was a way to give it some structure. We had a lot of neat young people at Richmond, but they didn't have any way to sort of come together and accomplish more by doing it in groups. And so the Bonner program at the University of Richmond was really the first effort to sort of put a stamp on it, that being of service to your community, being involved as a servant leader was an important part of what it was to be an educated person. And so I was playing that song all day long, and it didn't take much. The faculty at the University of Richmond clearly understood the value of this kind of program, as did the staff. We had a wonderful chaplain there by the name of David Burhans. And as I remember, Bobby, we kind of connected it to the chaplain's office. That was built more around the people who were in that office than it was to make any kind of a religious statement. Those were the best people to provide leadership for the Bonner program. I don't know whether that's still in place or not. When we came here in '98 and then were blessed to have a Bonner program be attached to Center College, we put it right smack dab in the center of student life. And that's where it remains, because we have had outstanding leadership. In fact, most of our Bonner leadership were Bonner students. And now they've kind of grown into a professional responsibility, and they are just doing a great job. And so I remain really committed to the program of which you're a part. And I'm looking now at all these different bases. Sophie, you're kind of down at 7:30 from me. And Emily, there you go. So I'm looking around as I go. I shouldn't do that. I know I'm supposed to look right at the camera. But so let me stop with that, Ellie.
Of course. And then lastly, after you became president of Center, could you talk about specifically the motivation behind the Bonner program there and the impact that it really had on campus and in the larger community?
Yeah, so I'm going to take you back to 1998. I was a young guy, new place. But I could tell almost from the time I arrived, we had a lot of good people here with good intentions who wanted to do well and wanted to do right, but they just didn't have any kind of machinery. They didn't have a structure to be able to kind of grab each other. A lot of it occurred at the time, as it does now, through our Greek life program. It's one of the reasons why, at least at Center College, I'm enthusiastic about what goes on in Greek life, because all of them are deeply and heavily involved in the life of our town, life of our community. But to have a cadre of students coming over the side of the boat every year who had a responsibility to be in the business of affecting others, to be involved in community life. That was just an opportunity not to be missed. And on a campus our size of about 1,400 students, you're to have 40 plus, 50 plus students who care about this sort of thing. It has an impact for good forever. So so it may not be the Bonner scholar who goes out and takes on a leadership position in his or her town or state or nation. It might be the roommate of that student. And quite candidly, I don't care which one it is, because that's the whole idea of the kind of work that you all are being asked to do. It's really in a kind of a biologic way, you're infecting other people to care about this sort of stuff. That's the real magic of the Bonner program, not the number of students who in fact benefited directly from it, though that counts a lot. What counts more is the people you have an impact on. And all of a sudden they think, I ought to be about that same kind of work. And so when I got here in '98, it was a lead pipe cinch. I don't remember that I even asked anybody that we were going to have a Bonner program. I just got on the phone with Bobby and some of the other folks and said, we need to get Miss Bonner out here so she can take a look and feel good, excited about the opportunity we might create for students here, and the rest is history. We've now been at it almost 20 years, and it's been a real joy to watch it develop. And again, I'm looking around at all the different students that I know. Susie and I have watched them grow up here and have an impact for good in Danville and Boyle County and beyond. So I'm a true believer when it comes to what goes on in the Bonner program, and I feel honored to have been asked to say a few words.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much. I'm going to pass it off to Robert now.
Perfect. So we're going to go to Tony Richardson. So I just want to give a few more things because he does incredible work. So as he was elected as Congressman at large, after his first term, he was reelected and appointed chairman of the Police, Fire, and Legislative Standing Committee. During his time on City Council, he sponsored legislation to increase hiring goal percentages for minorities and women in city projects, supported senior citizen initiatives, and worked diligently to address constituents' needs and concerns. His professional career has been connecting with his community and giving back. He transitioned to working for the Nord Family Foundation as a program officer and now also our newest board of trustees in the foundation, in the Bonner Foundation. The Nord Family Foundation has contributed more than $140 million to nonprofit organizations in Northern Ohio and the larger region. The foundation's major areas of focus over the last several years have been these projects endeavoring to strengthen families and strengthen public service. I want to reiterate that it is such a privilege to have Tony taking the time out of his busy schedule to talk to us and share his knowledge and expertise. My first question is, since you have spent half of your professional career in grassroots governance and local government positions, what are the differences and the similarities between the structure and the impact of a national grant giving and a local elected position?
Yeah, it's a great question, Robert. Thank you. Honestly, as far as back as I can remember, I never wanted a job or a title. I always was interested in sort of community building. And I had a mentor who asked me when I was out of college, I said, what am I going to do, right? And it's like, he said, what are you passionate about? Where do you care about? And if you pursue that, you're always going to feel good about where you end up, right? You'll always be able to sleep at night. And I never thought about money. It was like, I want to make a difference, right? And there's no monetary value on that. And so I start there. The difference has been, so the similarities is that you get a chance to impact communities, right? But you're impacting them in different ways. So when I was elected, I really focused on sort of the regulatory environment, legislation. And as Robert mentioned, I wrote legislation and sponsored it. I sponsored and wrote legislation to increase hiring goals for minorities and women on city contracts. So to break that down for you a little more and center it around sort of the implications and real world sort of ramifications of that, a lot of times when cities have public contracts to either do infrastructure, whether it's roads, new water lines, expansion of development, whether it's commercial or residential, cities have a, they can allot contracts to different companies, right? And in certain communities, a lot of those companies are owned by, traditionally white, owned companies. And so I said, as we were going to pass a levy that was going to generate new operating dollars in our community around infrastructure, I said we need to increase and be clear and intentional about finding businesses that are owned by women and minorities so that they can sort of, buy into the franchise. And there was a lot of pushback on it, obviously. I was young. Like I said, I was the youngest person. They thought I was some radical, but it wasn't about being radical. It was about what was right, right? And so I won people over with that. And then from there, I took that sort of, that leverage, and I went to the school board in our local community who hadn't passed a levy for new operating dollars since 1992. And I said, I want to chair this campaign, right? I had just got elected. I had just passed a huge levy for new money in our community. And I was gonna go back to the voters and ask for more money to build new schools. Long story short, we passed a new levy. We have all new schools in the city, over I think 13 new schools. Had never been done in the history of the city. And again, it wasn't about a job. It was about how do I leverage what I'm passionate about, what I care about. And I might not know everything about financing, construction and projects, but I know there's nobody more, how can I put it, passionate about these issues, and we'll figure it out, right? It wasn't about Tony. It was about leveraging other expertise, bringing people together to move an agenda. The issue that I have with being an elected official is the politics, right? Like I was elected as a Democrat. I was a top vote getter. I actually won over Republicans. I don't know how I did that, but I was able to do that at a time when I was really young. And I think what everyone cared about was sort of the city they lived in. They cared about sort of jobs. They cared about their sort of property values, and they cared about good schools. And I said, I don't care what your political platform is. We all care about that, and we care about safety, right? And so really brought people together, was able to get some things done, but it took more time. Whereas working at a foundation, it's like outside of the political realm. You don't have to, worry about, talking to other parties and all the politics of parties and politics, which I've transcended, right? Like I'm not interested in your party. I'm interested in your politics and who you are, right? That tells me more about you than sort of, how you vote on certain issues. Because I think we have more things in common than we do not. But at the foundation, we're able to really leverage best practices across the country. So I'll give you a quick example. We had a huge homelessness problem in Northeast Ohio, like we do all across the country. No one's talking about affordable housing, right? I mean, this is a pandemic, not just with COVID-19, but with housing. We've never seen anything like this in the history of the world in terms of the homelessness numbers. And so what I did is I came across this guy named Lloyd Pendleton, who ultimately became a mentor for me. And he was the state director of homeless task force in the state of Utah. And I saw them on like the Ed show, right? I was like watching TV one night, and they had, over the last 10 years, they had reduced chronic homelessness by 92%. And what did they do? They gave homes to chronically homeless people, right? And so the financing of the structure of it is really complex, but essentially they took 30% of what people's public subsidies are. So if you're on Social Security, sort of any type of state or federal assistance, welfare assistance, 30% of that goes to your housing. And then the rest is made up from philanthropy and other local and federal resources that come from HUD at the national level that ultimately comes down to county and local governments. And so I went out, I called him. He's like, who is this kid from Ohio? I was like, I want to come see you. So I hop on a plane. I flew to Salt Lake City, right? It was amazing. And then I came back to Ohio, and I reached out to all of our partners throughout the country in Boston, Denver, and I said, you guys have to go see this. It's one thing for Tony to go see it, but you are the practitioners. You guys can pull it off. Let's go out. So we went out to Salt Lake City. We spent 3 days, learned the model, and I'm happy to say we're going to end chronic homelessness in my county and Cuyahoga County, where Cleveland is, by the end of 2021, right? So again, this has taken 5 years, but we're going to end a systemic issue. I couldn't have never done that as an elected official. There'd have been too many politics around who gets what and who doesn't get what. I mean, so people are living outside. Let's figure this out. And so that's an example of philanthropy in 5 years moving, right? Whereas in government, it would have took 15 to 20 years. So with that, I'll pause. But great question. And I know you have another one for me because we sort of like rehearsed. So just want to name that.
Definitely. Thank you so much. And your second question is, what made you transfer from a local elected position into civic engagement work at the Nord Family Foundation? What are some aspects of political life that you miss and you do not miss?
Well, my wife doesn't miss the campaigning, right? Because I mean, like, it's intense. Like, you're like looking at the polls, you're looking at exit. I mean, it's intense. Like, it's like I don't miss campaigning. I do miss the getting around your community and meeting people where they are. The connection you have, because you run as a Democrat or a Republican or independent, but once you get elected, you're the people's candidate, right? So I met so many people and I learned so much, and was able to make connections across and win people over and learn from them as well, and them win me over because I was their elected leadership. I miss that. I miss the bridging the gap, the coalition. I mean, right now in our country and around the world, we're so polarized, right? There's no in between. And I think it's in between is when we make the greatest sort of progress, right? The progress doesn't happen at the polar ends of spectrum. It doesn't happen because people don't talk, they don't come together, they don't negotiate. There's no reason to negotiate, right? But if we focus on what we have in common and we take incremental steps, because, you know, I'm just gonna stop right there. Like when I was like younger and in college, I was like, I wanted to like turn the world upside down. And it was like, you know what, there's a lot of smart people who came before me that weren't able to do that. So I'm probably not gonna be able to do that. But like, how can I like make incremental change? Because even with incremental change, it impacts real people's lives. Like think about those homeless people who all have homes. And we just financed our last deal in the city of Elyria. That's gonna be a 64 unit for people who are right now living on the street. They're gonna have a home. So just for those 64 people, not the, you know, tens of thousands that we've housed, but just for those 64 people, that's a game changer for them, right? You know, I say all that to say that I do miss sort of, like I say, being out and sort of working across the various sort of spectrum of our communities. I don't miss the campaigning. I don't miss the partisanship in politics. You know, I always been focused on, you know, tell me a problem and we'll get it. Oh, that's my dog, Bruno. He has something to say. You know, I've always been focused on, again, like I say, you know, what's the problem and how do we figure it out, right? And I think in philanthropy, you're able to pull, right? And then also lastly, I think being an elected official, you're tied to a particular area, right? I mean, if you have your constituents, whereas when you work in a national philanthropy, you have the entire world, right? So I'll just pause there and yeah, just shut up.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm gonna pass it to Ale.
Okay, so first, again, another thank you so much to our guest speakers. I'm gonna read some comments in the group chat now that show appreciation. So first of all, I gotta give a shout out to Dr. Allison Morrison-Shetler. She says, thank you to all the speakers for sharing. You're all inspiring and we thank you for making a difference in the lives of others. Pres-elect, University of Lynchburg. Sunny, one of the interns, says, thank you so much for sharing your stories and experiences. Amber Finnegan Simmons said, one of the most thoughtful and loving site supervisors you've ever met. Love you, Miss Shilretha. Jordan McCormick says, Stetson Bonner loves Miss Shilretha. John Roush went ahead and he says, right, go Spiders, go Colonels, go Bonner, with 5 exclamation points. Very exciting. And then Adrian Piazza says, love seeing the Spider Bonner love. Hi, Spiders. Loving Bonner love that's going around there. So I'm now going to pass it off to Robert.
Definitely. So it's often a lot to process all the ways people provoke change. And we want to make sure you all are given the space to open up and share your thoughts with each other. So we're going to break you all up into breakouts again, so you can have a space to share your insights. If you end up running through them quickly, here's some prompts to further the discussion. Then I'm gonna pass it to Ale.
So right now we're gonna do a quick poll, and I think Liz is gonna pull that up. What we're doing with the poll is a series of I agree statements. So we aren't necessarily agreeing or disagreeing with any of them, but it's more for you to gauge and get in the mindset of things we can discuss regarding impact. So go ahead and fill out the poll. So the first question is, in order to create impact, you must be wealthy. As individuals who attend an institution of higher learning, it is our duty to enact change as often as we can. Everyone is capable of making an impact and being an agent of change. Some people are naturally meant to lead and others are just meant to follow. There is value to every leadership style and they can all impact society for the better despite the differences.
About 70% of people voted so far, so we'll keep letting them come in. Allie, did you want me to read the answers when they're all in?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, we're about 90%. That's pretty good. So I'll just read out the answers for you all. We've got for number one, 99% of people disagree, 1% agrees. For number two, we've got 95% of people agree, 5% disagree. Number three, 93% of people agree, 2% disagree. Number four, 81% disagree, 19% agree. And number five, 97% agree, 3% disagree.
So this is something that, oh.
There you go. Sorry, you all can see it too.
So in your discussions, we're about to go into breakout groups, but definitely if something stuck out to you of the I agree statements, carry that on in your conversation there. But I will say that the main point of the breakout is that we want you to first introduce yourself by name, your pronouns, your college, and your majors and minors. And then we want to prompt you with the following, which is your I'll never forget moment. And this is, we are asking you to share a time in your life when somebody intentionally or unknowingly made an impact in your life and how that action has shaped your life moving on. So y'all will be put into the groups soon. And yeah, looking forward to hear from those discussions. Also, shout out to John Rock.
All right, how many breakout rooms did you want, Allie? Like 4 or 5 per room or bigger?
I think like 5 to 6 per room would be a good.
Gotcha. All right.